Hi everybody, Luke Filmboss here, and welcome to this week's box office breakdown, where there's good news and there's bad news, but more than anything, it's really just news. So let's just look at the box office here. So number one was taken by Raya and the Last Dragon, with a less than stellar and less than expected $8.5 million opening, which by comparison is around what Tenet and The Croods made, about a million less than those. It's 1.5 million more than the New Mutants made, but it's significantly less than Wonder Woman 1984 and the recent Tom and Jerry movie just made. So we'll get into that opening later down in this video. So in second was Tom and Jerry with a second weekend of 6.6 million, which is actually quite impressive when you consider the fact that a lot of people thought that the movie wouldn't even open to this number, and here it is making more than 6 million in its second weekend with a 53.2% drop, which isn't like an amazing hold, but considering how much it overperformed opening weekend, that's actually a solid hold. That's, I think, slightly better than the Croods 2 had, but that opened on a holiday weekend. But it's also much better than Wonder Woman 1984 did, which had a huge drop. So definitely being a family film is helping its legs here. And the fact that I think not quite as many people are seeing it on HBO Max as people did with Wonder Woman 1984, just because people feel a little bit more safe going to a theater, and because it's not quite as well known of a property, so the people who do have HBO Max probably aren't checking it out like they were with Wonder Woman 1984. If we get an official report on how well it did, we might be able to compare it, but I don't think it was nearly as high on HBO Max as Wonder Woman 1984. But yeah, it's got a total of 23 million so far. It's already topping the New Mutants total, and within the coming weeks, it's probably almost a guarantee for 40 million. It's probably going to top Wonder Woman 1984 unless it has some major drops in the coming weeks. But I think it's going to start having less and less drops. So it's probably going to get to 50 million at least. It has a very strong chance of topping both Tenet and the New Mutants. This is the second best second weekend for a pandemic film behind only Tenet, and it's only by a small amount, so we'll be keeping an eye on it. Chaos Walking opened to number 3 with a 3 point, it's not quite 3.8, but it's very close. So estimated 3.8 million opening, which is about in line with what most smaller movies are making, around 3.5 to 4.5 million. So it's right in that ballpark. And considering how much competition was in the weekend, most of those smaller openings all took number 1, outside of, well, even I guess the recent film The Marksman even took number 1. So yeah, considering its competition, that's actually a pretty good result. And Boogie, I guess that's like a smaller scale, somewhat wide but more limited release, opened to 1.2 million, which, I mean, considering the fact that most of these movies normally only make about 30 to 50 million in normal box office times, it's not terrible by comparison. The Croods 2 is finally showing some weakness due to the major competition of Tom and Jerry and Raya. It dropped 37.2, which still isn't a terrible drop, especially considering that it lost about 300 some theaters. But it's finally dropped out of the $1 million weekends with 788,000 weekends. It's going to be reaching about 55 million, probably a little bit more, but I'm starting to think now, because of its more recent drops, it won't be able to quite catch up to Tenet's 58 million total. But then again, it could. It has about 2 weeks of clear sailing. Next week there's nothing opening, and then the week after that, the only thing that's going to be like new as far as big movies is the Snyder Cut, which is only on HBO Max. So theaters will have about 2 weeks of free space to just have some pretty good holds, and so that might be able to give the Croods 2 the boost it needs to just get that win over Tenet. And then uh, 3 weeks from now, Godzilla vs. Kong opens, which isn't like major family competition, but I think it's going to be a pretty big movie. So that's just going to be uh, taking up a lot of the box office potential, which might damage the Croods' hold in that week. But I'm not quite sure. I think that it'll do pretty well and definitely get past 55 million without a doubt. The Little Things dropped 40.1%. I'm sorry, 40.9% after losing about 400 theaters. It had a weekend of 550,000 for a total of 13.7 million. It did okay for the kind of movie that it was. So then, right behind in the seventh place is Wonder Woman 1984, still holding on with a 27.5%. Actually, the best hold all the way until you go back down to number 12. So it's the best hold in the top 10, even after losing about 317 theaters. So it's definitely showing strength now that it's like in the lower numbers. It made $511,000, and it's definitely going to top the 45 million, maybe even get to 46 million by now. It's currently sitting at $44.4 million at the domestic box office, and right below it is The Marksman with just slightly less than a 500,000 weekend. The Marksman had one of the better holds in the top 10, just slightly bigger than Wonder Woman 1984, but it also lost 364 theaters. So The Marksman is now at 13 million, almost exact. And there's just 2 more spots in the top 10. Judas and the Black Messiah is continuing to drop with one of the biggest drops in the top 10 with 43.6. It's now below 300,000 in its 4th weekend. It's only made it to $4.5 million total, which is less than The Little Things opened with, which is a pretty sad result, especially considering that it was an okay movie and definitely somewhat important movie, considering it was like the big black centered movie that was released during Black History Month. It was a good movie, and I'm sad that it's not receiving a little bit more recognition. I'm kind of curious to know how it did on HBO Max, because that's where I saw it. And the last movie in the top 10 is Monster Hunter with 250,000 weekend. It had a 45.2% drop, and it now sits at 14.4 million total. It might get to 15 million, which wouldn't be terrible considering that it only opened with 2 million. So it's had good legs, but I've heard that it's not a very good movie. So it's not surprising that it didn't like do amazing. So yeah, that's the top 10. I just want to look at the worldwide here. Hi Mom is now going to breach 800 million for sure in China, and we'll probably get past that by a little bit, maybe even significantly. But Detective Chinatown 3 will get past 700. And then there's some other picks, but let's now look at our domestic markets, how they're doing worldwide. And Tom and Jerry is making a little bit. It had a pretty big overseas drop due mostly to China. It now sits at 34.2 million in the international box office, with 23 million from USA. So it's now at 57 million. It's reached number 6 spot worldwide. And Raya and the Last Dragon had a pretty poor opening, not only a mediocre opening in America, but internationally it didn't do extremely well. It only opened with 17.6 million, and it opened with less in China than Tom and Jerry did, I'm pretty sure. I think Tom and Jerry opened to around 12 million, and Raya opened to around 8.5, which is about as much as it did in America. But I guess Seoul opened to similar numbers to Raya and the Last Dragon, and it went on to make a little bit over 50 million there. So we'll see how well Raya's legs are. And it isn't even in the top 10 worldwide at this point, with 26 million worldwide. So it's kind of a disappointing start, especially since I thought Raya could do extremely well internationally. Once again, we'll see how its legs go and as it opens into other markets to see how they do. But I guess when you consider the fact that Disney Plus has over 95 million subscribers, and they're able to get it for premium access. And by the charts that we do have, like the statistics that we've been seeing on their trending charts, Raya is doing better on their streaming service than most movies are currently. The only thing topping it is WandaVision, which has 9 episodes out now. So Raya is doing well, surprisingly much better than Mulan. I guess not surprisingly, but considering how well it's doing, by what we know so far, it's actually doing pretty well on Disney Plus, and they get to keep that full $30. So, like, considering the fact that Disney keeps all of that money, they're probably making a good bit. Just like thinking about how many people they need to break even, like out of their 95 million subscribers, they probably only need like a small fraction of those people to actually get Raya on premium access, and they break even. Like, it's pretty interesting how that all works. So I guess if the loss at the box office can be made up for with its decent performance on Disney Plus. So right now, Raya's reviews, they're still holding on. They're doing pretty solid. It's kind of surprising that it didn't open with more, but there's some reasons for that. Yeah, Raya's reviews are still at 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, one of Disney's best reviewed movies in quite a while. It's like on par with Moana. So yeah, the 8.5 million opening for Raya is well below my 20 million optimistic forecast. I really thought Raya was going to be a big hit, but it's just not. And I think, first off, yes, Disney Plus is kind of in the way of that. When you consider, like with Wonder Woman 1984, the fact that it's on streaming and in theaters, that does dampen the performance. And I think with Disney Plus's massive subscriptions, that is definitely affecting Raya both in the U.S. and worldwide. And I mean, I can understand the business plan there, that it's not just about the domestic box office anymore. It's not just about the box office in general. You have to look at everything. And so for the movie theaters, this isn't great. This is one of the lower big Hollywood movies that have been released in theaters during the pandemic, and it didn't do great. But the other thing is, why didn't they give Raya and the Last Dragon its own week? Like, WandaVision's 9th episode released this weekend on Friday. Like, almost everybody's talking about that and pointing that out. It's like, why didn't they just give Raya some room to breathe? Like, there's nothing opening next week. They could have literally just given Raya that spot, and it might have opened better. It would have given the other movies in this weekend some room to breathe at the box office by not having Raya there. And then the next weekend, because those movies also would have another, even if they had good holds, they would have another drop, and Raya would be able to take up that space that was left in the box office. I think it would have definitely done better. But, like, I don't understand why Disney, like, didn't just do that. Like, why did they have to do it? Like, is it because they're trying to, like, dominate the weekend? Like, we have WandaVision and Raya. It's like, I don't get it. Like, are we sure that Warner Brothers was, like, so stupid with their HBO Max and theater release of their movies? Like, it seems to be working pretty well for them. Like, are we sure that Warner Brothers isn't the one with the better business plan?
You don't see them picking each other over for a percentage.
And yeah, so that's definitely a big thing, is the fact that it was released on Disney Plus and during the same weekend as WandaVision. So it's just a weird way for Disney to be doing things. But overall, I think that Raya could have some pretty strong legs. A lot of people have been pointing out that the demographic for Raya and the Last Dragon is small because it's mostly just centered, more appealing to women, because that's almost like all the characters. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that could have affected this, and a lot that definitely did affect it. But I think it could still have strong legs. I think we're looking at a 40 to 45 million end for Raya, as long as, I guess, as long as Godzilla vs. Kong isn't like a monster hit, which, because it's on HBO Max, I don't think it's going to be like that big. So thank you for watching my box office breakdown this week, everybody. I guess I'll see all of you later. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell, and just be on the lookout for more videos from Luke Film Boss. I'll see y'all later.